My name is Florian Uhlich. I'm a pianist and piano professor at the Music University in Lübeck, and I'm currently in Korea for a number of activities, including concerts at the Seoul Arts Center at Incheon and some lessons and masterclasses here at Eon Academy. Thank you for having me here as part of the activities here at the Eon Academy. It's so nice to be in touch and to catch up with all your activities here in Seoul.
That's very nice. Yes, it's great to see you. And I know that you've been here in Seoul many times already. And you told me that you worked here in Gwangju University, although it was many years back in time. So I would like to ask you, what was your impressions over Korean students?
Well, as you say, I've been very privileged to be visiting Korea for well over 25 years now for concerts and masterclasses, and I've been lucky to travel to various places and cities in Korea. That's the one part of it, and the other part of it is that, of course, in the German music scene we have quite a few gifted Korean students at the music universities, young people who are just starting on their professional lives as pianists.
Okay, so to make it short, in your opinion, does it matter or does it affect the result of the video screening whether the video recording was made in a professional setting or like a casual setting using a handphone or just a private equipment? What is your opinion about that?
Well, as you say, since COVID, we've now gone over to have a two-tier system as part of the entrance exams, and we still have the situation that the first round is a video recording. And when we see these videos, when we watch the material, it's surprising to see that there is quite a variety of different technological standards. There are some people who actually go into the expense of booking an expensive studio with a very sophisticated recording and video recording technique, and there are some students who indeed record something on their own mobile phone. There is no requirement, strictly speaking, for this recording to have a professional standard. It does make a difference, but given our expertise and experience, we can look through this smokescreen, as it were, and I think even if somebody passes on material on a mobile phone, we can judge artistic quality and potential, so it's not a must. Of course it helps, but then the dangerous thing is that very often a performance that's taking place in a professional recording studio can make things look and sound nicer than they actually are. So, and over the years we've gathered quite a bit of experience, and now we'll be able to go through this, through the cosmetic thing, as it were, and really be able to judge what does the student have to offer in terms of where they are with their performance, with their expertise, with their technical skills, and with what they have to say. And that even comes through if it's done on inferior quality recordings.
Okay, so it says it does not permit any editing, but people still do it?
It's difficult for us to really prove the point, but the rules, at least in Lübeck, are that within each movement or each piece, you're not allowed to edit, but you are allowed to use different takes on different pieces. So we have situations, for instance, where we see students sending in tapes where they wear different clothes, but that's quite all right. If, for instance, they play a Bach prelude in fugue in some sort of gear and then they return on another day and they record a Beethoven sonata, that's quite all right, that's allowed. What they're not allowed to do is to edit a performance within the given movement, and I suppose it'll be quite difficult for them to edit the material in such a way that you don't notice, because video recordings can be very complicated to edit.
Yes, right. Unlike CD recording.
CD recordings are much easier to edit, but that's why it has to be video.
Okay, so what are the other most deciding factors for the jury members?
We look at various things. That's not necessarily in the order of priority, but we look at technical proficiency. Are they actually technically able to play the chosen repertoire? We're looking at expression above all. We're looking at personality. We're looking at the ability to shape music. And we're looking on the whole at where they are and where we think they might be going. And that's not easy to judge, but there is something that will let you read the artistic and pianistic potential, though it's only a glimpse of what they do. And very often the reality is that students try and make contact before, and they come in for a private lesson or a master class or a consultation lesson. And that's very useful for them and for us, because it gives us a chance to meet the person and to see how they respond in a lesson situation. Because after all, we as professors are making a decision to commit ourselves to working together for 2, or in the case of a bachelor program, 4 years. So we do want to make sure that whoever gets chosen really has the potential to develop themselves over 4 years.
That's quite interesting. This is quite a spontaneous question, but I would like to ask you this. Let's say there is a student, a young student, who is technically quite well developed, but emotionally quite poorly charged, let's say. And then another student at the same age is technically not so well developed. He's at a basic or just medium, so moderately developed yet, but he's full of musical instinct and very much emotionally charged. Then who do you think that the most of the jury members would pick? And what about you yourself?
I think it's difficult to break it down. We're very lucky that we have a lot of applications, and we always end up with the chosen few who accomplish both disciplines, who are technically proficient and who also have something to say on a musical level. If we feel that there are very apparent deficiencies in terms of the playing technique, then this would be somebody we would not choose. Likewise, if we feel there is somebody who plays well from a technical point of view but who has very little to say, then that also might be somebody we may not ask to appear in person for the second round. Not at all. There used to be a rule, I think a few years ago, where students were only allowed to apply twice or 3 times, but that's now been abolished to give students a chance to apply again. We do track previous applications though, so if somebody applies, they get a particular number, and that is kept in the computer system so that if they reapply a year later, that we still recognize their data. And we can see it in the entrance exam because they will be given a particular number that differs slightly from the other candidates who apply afresh. And that's how we can see that this is somebody who was there already. Generally, I keep a tight record of all these things on my laptop. So I always walk in with my laptop and I make notes on all the candidates. And if there is a name that's got a particular number, I can look it up from a previous session, from a previous entrance exam, and I can chase their name and I can look at what they play. And that's also very interesting to see whether, compared to the previous entrance exam, maybe at least they managed to change their repertoire so that we see they have made some progress and they have really worked hard to develop their repertoire. But it's nice to see that people don't get stuck and that they play a perpetual repertoire of 3 or 4 chosen pieces and they try and just perfect that over a particular period of time.
But let's say the applicant repeats the same repertoire from last year.
That's not necessarily a knockout criterion. We try and find the documents from the previous session, and if we can see that they're playing the same repertoire, personally, I will have also made notes about what the performance was like. And if I then compare the new performance to the previous performance and I can see that there's been a positive development, then it could be a yes. If, however, the same problems persist, either in terms of technical challenges or in terms of any limitations about the musical expression, then of course it helps me as a professor to see what I notated the last time and therefore be able to compare the 2 performances.
I'm going back to your comments about having enough time to get to know each other. I mean between the student and the teacher before the Aufnahmeprüfung, so that both have enough time to sort of decide whether they have found the right person. So that means that they call it this process They call it in German making Kontakt. And having a Vorspiel. Right. Well, I'm particularly interested in your German entrance exam system because in Korea, the situation is quite opposite. I'm not sure if you know, but in Korean entrance exam, students and the professors are not supposed to make any contacts. This is to prevent any kind of scandal, any kind of corruption, of course. So when students play the exam on stage, sometimes they even make a curtain so that the professors don't see who play on the stage. So we call it like a blind test. So in this sense, I find this quite a different system of, the exactly opposite situation of Korean entrance exam and German entrance exam, very interesting. So I wonder, do you think that this free contacting system in Germany, does it help selecting students freely in German entrance exam?
Of course, I'm very much in favor of that because it's not a one-way street. It's very important to understand for us as professors that the students have a choice too. We have just in Germany 24 music colleges and plus all the other conservatoires in the UK, in Austria, in Scandinavia, in the States and so forth. And we do have to realize that students have a choice and they don't necessarily have to study with me. So it's very important for them as well to have a sort of feeling out session and see whether they like me and my teaching style or whether they like the environment of the chosen university, which is really important because the students too and their parents are making a significant contribution and commitment to educating themselves. And therefore they have to be happy. I fully support that. And when there's somebody who sends me an email and says they are asking for a so-called Vorspiel or a consultation lesson, then I try and answer every single request and always try and integrate every single one and also give them an opportunity in addition to that private lesson to sit in for a day or two and to do what we call Hospitation. That means to sit in and listen to when I teach all the other students who are already in my class, because that might be interesting too. Let's not forget, students who come to play for me are under a lot of stress and they may not be able to really judge the reality of the teaching situation fully. So that's why I think it's very useful that once they've done their bit, they can sit down and they can observe the other lessons and also sort of continue to observe what the teacher has to say, to also get a feeling of what the general level in the class is, and get a feel also of the personal chemistry in the class. Do I really want to be part of it? Do I feel welcome? Do I feel this is a nice environment where I want to commit myself for learning and developing my skills for the next 4 years? These are very important questions and students have that choice and we want to support them in making that choice and giving them a fair picture of who we are and what we have to offer. And questions are always welcome.
For those European students who live in European countries, it is easier for them to make contacts to European professors and just come and visit them and make contacts and play for them. It's quite easy for them geographically. But on the other hand, for those students who live in Asian countries, it is quite not easy because it's geographically is quite a distance, and as you know, distance means equals money. So that is a big disadvantages that Asian students have to bear with. So would you accept, in that sense, online lessons or online master classes from Asian students?
It does happen quite a bit. So I do get emails from students in Korea, in Japan, in China, in Brazil, for instance, just recently. And these are places that, as you say, are very far away. And people won't be able to travel to Germany and meet me well before the entrance exam. So by all means, yes, that's where we can work online. And we have learned a lot from the COVID days. So at home I have quite high-tech equipment with a video camera, with very good loudspeakers, with a microphone, which lets me do at least an informative initial session online. And once they have placed their application and they have passed the video round, and then they get invited to perform in person, they would typically not arrive on the day of their entrance exam. That's when there could be, in fact, an opportunity for a personal meeting. So this is something that I observe happens quite a few times recently. It's been lovely to perform here at this beautiful venue. It felt like being reminded of what these pieces were first conceived for, when they were first written. Of course, I play this in major concert halls, but let's not forget that a lot of the pieces written by Schumann and by Brahms were written for a more intimate atmosphere, like in a salon, which was a very popular concept in the 19th century. And it's nice to be able to share this intimate music in an intimate scene here. And I was very impressed with your audience here. They were a very attentive small crowd, and surely knew a lot about piano performances and the repertoire, and I found them highly appreciative, and I had a really wonderful time and very much enjoyed that concert here.
Okay, Florian, so I know that you've done a lot of album projects. So would you like to elaborate on it a little bit for me?
Well, I've done probably about 30 albums for my label that I'm very closely associated with. That's Hensler Classic, and probably another 20 on various other labels, especially for chamber music collaborations when I choose to work with artists who are on other labels. All the projects that are particularly important for me have been for Hensler Classic, and I first started collaborating with them, I think it was in 2002 or 2003, which was a recording of the complete works for piano and orchestra by Dmitri Shostakovich. So we had recorded the two piano concertos and the concertino, opus 94. And a few years later, I did a Beethoven disc, and that's really when that collaboration started to flourish. I think this was back in 2007. And then we started preparing the 200th anniversary of Robert Schumann back in 2010, and embarked on a project to record the complete works by Robert Schumann for piano solo and for piano and orchestra. And when I say complete, I mean complete. So every single note this genius has written was recorded, including versions and truncated versions and various sketches of everything that he produced in the creative process to the finished result. As we all know, there are two versions of things like the Davidsbündler Tänze, and we thought there are two versions of the Symphonic Studies Opus 13, when in fact there are three, and there are various other sketches and interesting formats on the creative path. So we ended up with a whole box when it finally came out about 2 or 3 years ago of 19 CDs altogether.
Wow, that's really a lot of it. I mean, humongous work. And it took you about 10 years or 12 years?
It took us 12 years. Yes, you're right. It was supposed to take us 10 years, but then we needed another 2, because on the way we discovered more interesting things and more sketches. For instance, there's one, and all these discs have particular themes or topics. One is called Schumann and the Counterpoint, which I think is volume 7. And it was supposed to be one disc. And then as we started working and digging up material and completing sketches and reconstructing sketches, we found that it would actually be enough repertoire for 2 discs, so that's a double whammy. And the same happened for another disc, which I think is 14, and that was Schumann and the Variation Form. That also ended up being 2 discs. So, and doing all the work and preparing it in a sort of diligent way, it took us eventually 12 years before the whole disc came out.
So, I mean, how did you manage all that?
Well, it was intense, but we were aiming, obviously, to release or record 1 to 2 CDs per average per year. And while, of course, I was trying to play the major pieces in concert before. There are some pieces that don't really lend themselves so well to public performance. For instance, Schumann wrote a whole series of small fugues and preludes and so forth, more or less for study purposes. And then there are, of course, the two rather wonderful books of the Album für die Jugend, Album for the Young. And while that is fabulous repertoire, it may not be so brilliantly suited to being performed in the concert context. So I did not play those in public before, but I took it straight to the studio. But the majority of other pieces, of course, the big ones, the War Horses, I did play, and I have played them before the recording project started as well, and I felt quite comfortable to take them to the studio. And being very fortunate to work with an outstanding team of producer and sound engineer, we got there in the end.
I mean, having that kind of colleagues is such a blessing. How did you like comparing solo performance and giving chamber music work? I mean, how do you compare them?
You mean in the recording context, or in the recording context? It's a different, yeah, the recording chamber music has its tricky aspects because depending on who you play with, but it's not just one person who's got to get it right, but it's 2 or 3 or 4. And intonation for strings and also for woodwinds can be a challenging aspect. So on the piano, you have to make sure that every single take you deliver is as perfect as could possibly be, because you may very well record the same take 3 or 4 times and the violin or the cellist hasn't quite got it yet. That can be a tricky thing in the editing process, that eventually the producer has to pick something that makes sense for the violin, but is maybe not such a great take on the piano. So it's about pushing around that blanket and making sure that everyone is happy in the end. And that requires great experience and enthusiasm and focus in the recording studio.
That is true. I mean, playing together is quite a tricky job, but you managed it quite successfully. Congratulations, Florian. The last question is, what is your advice for the aspiring Korean students who want to study in the German Hochschule?
Oh, that's such a difficult question to answer, because I know everyone is hoping for her, really. Yeah. I wish I knew the answer. I think my advice to Korean students, or in fact to any other students throughout the world who are trying to embark on a program of studies in Germany, is obviously work hard. And I think that's what people have always done when they start the piano. But I think what helps is to actually try and stick your neck out and establish some contact with the German hemisphere, and maybe go and visit the country and try and attend master classes, get to know some of the professors to get a feel of what might be waiting for you and which professor might be suitable for your needs. So do look around, do try and attend master classes, establish a personal contact, talk to friends. We have very welcoming departments and international relation offices that help with all matters concerning the entrance exam, the process of getting there, the process of settling in, finding accommodation, also finding work, being integrated into the fabric of the music university. But I think it's about trying to make the contact first and getting a good feel.
So your answer actually leads me to the last question. This is our signature question. So Florian, what is the piano to you?
That is a very philosophical question. The piano is something for me that's always there. It's like a friend. It's like a partner that forms the real sort of bed of my life. It's the whole ground of what my life is about, in all sorts of different ramifications, whether it's as a teacher, or whether it's as a performer, whether it's as a recording artist, whether it's doing interviews like we're doing now and talking about what I do. It's like a friend. It's like the fuel also that drives your life with its many different possibilities.
Thank you, Florian, for the great interview. It was such an intelligent interview.